The patient advantage. So 2 years ago, I'll invite our panelists just to come, and you can come sit down as I just give the prep. So 2 years ago, CDL Cancer started something that doesn't exist anywhere else in early stage health innovation. The science in oncology moves fast, which means sometimes the patient perspective can arrive late. And this happens because the structure of early stage development does not typically prioritize patient perspective. Regulatory timelines force the conversation eventually, but by then, some foundational decisions have often been made. So you're retrofitting patient input onto a product that was built without it. The CDL Patient Contribution Group is one of our latest innovations at the Creative Destruction Lab, and I'm so thrilled to share more with you, the panel to share more with you about it today. It puts patient contributors in the room from session 1 of CDL, sitting alongside the mentors, asking the same questions any user would ask. Does this match what I actually experience? Does it address my need? Does it answer the question as to what actually really matters? So Robbie Spring, along with the Canadian Cancer Society and CDL, built this from the inside out. Robbie joined CDL Cancer as a patient contributor. She'll tell you more about her story in a bit. And to discuss more about what we've built over the last 2 years and what the future looks like for the patient voice, please welcome our panel. I mentioned just in the opening remarks, Laura, I'll start with you, just the innovation of the Patient Contribution Group and embedding that into the CDL Cancer program has been, it's really novel, it's really new for us. But you've been thinking about this from the scientific perspective and regulatory side for a very long time. And why do you think patient input matters at the earliest stages of technology development?
Yeah, so the scientific reality is that if you're not speaking to patients, you're missing a very critical piece of evidence. So our ventures have amazing technology, it's very impressive, and it's often inspired by patients, which is fantastic. But without patients having that input throughout, there's a risk of embedding assumptions in there that could be tested with the patients that matter most. And scientists, we've realized this for the past, I would say, decade and maybe a little bit more. We've had to totally revamp how we do health research to incorporate this perspective. CCS has recognized this, and regulators are following suit. So now more and more, Health Canada, FDA, you're seeing the requirements of patient-relevant outcomes in these submissions, and that's just going to increase over time. So what Robbie noticed several years ago, and many others, is that despite that, many health ventures come into CDL never having a structured conversation with a patient. Or if they do, it's ad hoc, or it happens down the road. And at that point, you're either doing a long, expensive redesign because you've missed something early on, or this beautiful technology just doesn't scale, just doesn't work, it doesn't reach the patients. So the Patient Contribution Group, what's happening is they're totally changing that. Structured, intentional conversations from day one, built into the CDL process, and this is what it takes to build what works for the ventures, for the science, and most importantly for the people's lives that this technology is meant to change.
And I'm doing this a little bit backwards, but Laura, would you mind just providing some context for the room on your research so that people can understand, the world in which you live?
Sure. Yes, I'm a professor here at University of Toronto and chief scientist at Trillium Health Partners. I work in health research, mostly big data, population health, and health systems, and I study how to make the health system work better. So I was very excited about that previous announcement.
Yeah. So Robbie, I'm going to move to you, and we won't do it backwards this time. Maybe introduce yourself first, and then I will ask you a question.
Sure. I'm Robbie. I'm the lead of the CDL Cancer Patient Contribution Group. I will tell you a bit of my story. I was brought into CDL Cancer after having 15 years across research, hospital, academia, and industry. And then I found myself 3 years ago with breast cancer. I saw all these gaps in what it was like to be a patient going through the system. And then also having this professional lived experience that should have helped me navigate the system, but I felt like a fish out of water. And I'll add that my sister and I had breast cancer at the same time, our mom a few years prior, and our dad then got prostate cancer, so it was 4 out of 5 of my family members within 5 years. I was brought into CDL Cancer during chemotherapy, and it completely changed my view and showed me absolutely what was possible, and they brought me in to build this thing, and it's living, breathing, and continuing to grow.
Okay, so let's talk about this thing.
Yes.
You've spent a lot of time in different patient groups, engaging in patient communities all over Canada and the world. You travel to, convene and share ideas. How is what we're designing here different than other spaces?
Yes. So what we're designing here is different because traditional patient engagement can be done at any phase as we're learning, but you have it done in research, and it's growing in the research community where there's patient partners like what Laura was saying. Then you move into company formation and the innovation stage, which is what we're addressing. Going down the pipeline a little bit later, you have clinical trials. Patients are involved in that phase. You go to regulatory, more and more patients are involved in that phase. And then you go into the policy implementation side of things. So what we're doing is we're addressing a gap in having patients actually work with innovators at the formation of their companies when they're still able to shape how the therapies and the diagnostics actually are developed and then hit the patient. So it's a gap that we've built and addressed here at CDL for the first time in the world. And to Sonia's point, I've embedded myself in patient advocacy, and I work with many organizations, including Canadian Cancer Society. And I also sit on an international committee with Patient-Focused Medicines Design. It's a nonprofit, and they have a conference every year called the Patient Engagement Open Forum. And I was invited to speak on this work last year, and I'll be speaking again on some of this work next week in Spain. And the entire community of patient engagement experts was blown away at what we've built here because of the unique ecosystem that CDL has, and no one's seen something quite like this. And there's a lot of downstream implications for investor communities in the example that we're setting here, but it's completely new, and that was validated last year, so it makes it even more exciting.
And this is your line, Robbie, so I'm going to credit Robbie for this one, turning lived experience into value.
Yes.
So Anne-Marie, I'll go to you. If you don't mind introducing yourself first, and then I will follow up with a question.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Great to be here. My name is Anne-Marie Edwards, and I'm the Vice President of Cancer Strategy and Innovation at the Canadian Cancer Society.
And you heard Robbie talk about the different groups she's involved in, and she mentioned patient advocacy. Can you share a bit with the room who may not be as familiar, how is patient advocacy different and complementary to the work we're trying to do through the CDL Patient Contribution Group?
Sure. So as you've mentioned, definitely similarities and differences. I would say that both are grounded in bringing real-world evidence into view, to the forefront. And that evidence comes directly from people with lived and living experience. And there really isn't anything more powerful than that. It's ultimately the patient stories that stick with people and stay in people's minds days and weeks and months after.
If you don't mind, one follow-up question for you,
Yep.
Anne-Marie, which is, CCS is the largest cancer charity in the country. You do incredible work to support and connect Canadians living with cancer, coordinating nationally, supporting people through the most challenging chapter of their lives. And not just them, but also their caregivers and their loved ones. Mm-hmm. Can you share with the room a little bit about the connection between the work that we do together in CDL Cancer and the hands-on, engagement that you do with the community across the country?
Absolutely. So there's so many things that the CDL Cancer Partnership has brought to the Canadian Cancer Society. I would say the three that stand out the most for me are, we were talking about nodes earlier. I think CDL Cancer has added another node to our network, that being the innovation ecosystem. So essentially, we work with clinicians, researchers, policymakers, patients, families, decision makers, and now we have entrepreneurs and the investment community. And that actually really helps our supporters be able to understand the current impact, but also the future impact that we stand to make through our investments in research. So that's really powerful. I would say the second thing is, because CCS is one of the biggest funders of cancer research in Canada, it actually offers our funded researchers another path to consider. For those folks who are interested in bringing their research to real life to benefit people, this is a new path that a lot of people haven't considered before. And then thirdly, and probably most powerfully, is the hope that it generates, because people in the room, in our sessions, including our patient partners, talk about the hope that it generates and it creates, which is incredibly powerful and valuable for people going through what often is the hardest time in their lives.
So part of the design of the CDL Patient Contribution Group is we use the cohort model just like we do with CDL Ventures. So each year we bring in a new set of patient contributors that work alongside the alumni from the previous year. Today, I am so honored and pleased to have and welcome Mary DeVera here. Mary is actually a full-time researcher at the University of British Columbia. No? Yeah? Daryl? No? Okay, thank you. BC, Vancouver. She's also been investing her time from her very busy schedule to help make the oncology innovations of tomorrow better. So Mary, I'm going to pass it to you if you don't mind sharing a bit about you and your story, as well as if you could share with the room how you worked with one of the ventures this year.
Okay, thank you. So to share my story, I have to take us a little bit back to the past. So May 25th, 2016, I was starting chemoradiation for stage 3 rectal cancer. So I'm sorry to Ajay, I couldn't have imagined 10 years later, almost to the date, that I'd be on main stage at Super Session. So actually, with rectal cancer, it's down there, back there. It comes with a lot of shame and embarrassment. So talking about cancer was the last thing I wanted to do. But when a cancer comes with that much stigma, talking about it is what actually undoes it. So I didn't just have my voice, I actually had training as an epidemiologist. So after I finished treatment, so surgery, an ileostomy, I had a temporary bag, and then more chemotherapy, I actually went back to my work at UBC and built a colorectal cancer outcomes research program. And in that work, I work with patient research partners to shape my research. So I actually came into the patient contribution group already knowing the value of the lived patient experience, but not my own patient experience. So as a member of the PCG, I've grown to really appreciate even more the value of the patient perspective. So I just want to highlight examples. So one shout out is to Dynamic. So shout out to Michael. As someone who has lived experience, I think I bring in things that I wish I knew when I was a patient. So their innovation focuses on preserving structure and function. And as someone who's lost significant function in some of my body parts because of my treatment, I think innovations that will preserve that for future patients is just incredible. So we had an opportunity to work with them about clinical trial recruitment. So I think as patients, we bring a been there, done that perspective, so we know what it's like to sit with those physicians. So I think that was a really fruitful discussion. Another venture that I have to shout out is Lysin. So shout out to Hannah. So their innovation is all about addressing diagnostic uncertainty. And then we were working with developing patient testimonials. And I had to bring a personal experience with my sister, because as Robbie, it's just not my story, it's my whole family's experience. So my sister was navigating 2 inconclusive mammograms, an ultrasound, a biopsy, and waiting for an open biopsy during that discussion. So I think when we're talking about that experience, we not only developed a patient testimonial, a very real one, we actually also surfaced a position for this innovation in the cancer pathway. So I think it's really been healing for me that I didn't know I needed. And I think I'm going to steal from the tagline, I think you're building something meaningful. So thank you.
So can we clap for Mary, please? So that was just... And she didn't even write any of that down. That was so good. Just thank you for sharing your story and spending the time. It was a lot of time in between sessions, in sessions, flying here multiple times. So thank you so much. Robbie, I'm going to come back to you. So you said it at while you were giving your intro, and maybe folks didn't catch it, so I just want to restate that you first met us about 3 years ago. You walked into the lecture hall in this building, and you were mid-treatment.
Yes.
And you made the courageous decision to say yes to the invite that CCS gave you to come see this new thing. And by the end of that program year, you were thinking through and imagining ways that you could expand your impact and reach and create something brand new. So 3 years in, what have you learned?
3 years in, I've learned that CDL is the most wonderful environment. I know I keep plugging it,
We are not paying her to say that.
Listen, patient engagement, a lot of people look at it and say like, oh, that's sweet, but no one actually wants to do anything about it. And you gave me a mic 2 years ago at Super Session. I walked on stage and essentially pitched the idea, and you made it happen. And so I think other environments, and I've been in many of them, don't necessarily take it seriously in this way, and we've been able to build something massive. And I'll give you numbers. In year one, which was our pilot, we worked with 7 ventures and had, I think, around 15 meetings. And then this year, with the same number of patients, we worked with 15 ventures and had 29 meetings. And so in a very short amount of time, we've built something completely new to the world, and we're starting to scale it. And so that's the most exciting part. And so I never would have imagined that dragging myself here a few days out from being in my first chemo with a high fever, the last time I had long hair in 3 years, would turn into this a couple years later. So it's very cool.
You often hear our mentors say that there's nothing more optimistic than being an entrepreneur. And I can think of maybe one thing, which is the bravery that you had to take the first step and start this. So I just want to say a huge thank you, Robbie, to you, on behalf of this entire community for all of your hard work. Big round of applause for Robbie. And one more big round of applause, please. We started the CCS partnership about 4 years ago. It's the first ever disease-specific stream we did at CDL. We didn't know how to build one. We hadn't built one yet. CCS really believed in our vision. Anne-Marie, you specifically have been such a champion, and I want to just give a huge round of applause to the CCS team for enabling all of this value across the ecosystem. We've now brought in partners like the Alberta Cancer Foundation, Tories, KPMG, to support the growth of the next stage of oncology companies. So a big round of applause for CCS, please.